I woke up to the call of nature putting pressure on my bladder, the effect of last night's indulgence of Angry Orchards and Red's Wicked Apple with my girlfriend Tommy, taking its toll. I sat up and looked over. Tommy was lying on her side with her back to me, her face nearly pressed against the bedside fan. It wasn't a particularly warm night, but the cool breeze blowing on us helped us both to sleep. I placed my feet on the floor and was about to stand up when my phone on the nightstand began to vibrate. I looked at it. It was an incoming call. I checked my watch. The Indiglo numbers on its face read 2:58, almost 3 in the morning. Who would be calling at this hour? I picked up the phone and looked at it. It continued to vibrate in my hand. The name on the caller ID showed that of my girlfriend, Tommy Lynn, calling for a Facebook Messenger video chat. What the fuck? I looked over at my girlfriend, still lying beside me, face to the fan. I looked back at the phone. Incoming call from Tommy Lynn. What the hell? Whatever urge I needed to relieve myself disappeared in that moment as my brain threw off the dregs of drowsiness to figure this out. Maybe someone had hacked her account? If so, it was way too late for someone to be pulling a prank. Whomever was calling was about to get a nasty earful of my wrath. I tapped the green answer icon. It was dark in my room, so the only light came from the phone itself. It took several seconds for the video to connect, but when it did, I was further confused. There, on the screen, was the face of my girlfriend. Short cropped brunette hair with blonde highlights, green eyes, and a look of panic. Again, I looked in the bed beside me. Sure enough, the form next to me was the same as what was now showing on my phone screen. Tommy? I said somewhat shakily. What the? Before I could get another word out, the face on my phone screen spoke hurriedly. Don't hang up, she said. This isn't a joke. I have something important I need to tell you. But you're here, I said, still not understanding what was happening. I know, she responded. I need to tell you you're in danger. I need you to listen. Okay, I said somewhat hesitantly. I need you to check and see if I'm still breathing. My heart froze in mid beat. What? I tried to stammer out a response. Still breathing? Just do it, she said frantically. We don't have much time. Cautiously, I turned to the dormant body lying next to me. With the phone in one hand, held so phone Tommy could see also, I used the other to roll over the motionless form. When I did, my heart skipped several more beats as it leapt up completely into my brain, causing the two to collide and derail like an instantaneous train wreck. Her face was death white, her eyes wide open with a look of sheer terror frozen in them. Her mouth hung open as if locked in an eternal scream. Tommy, I stammered, shaking her. It's too late for that, interrupted phone Tommy. That's what I was afraid of. There's nothing you can do for me, she said, trying to avoid the obvious confusion I already felt. I need you to listen very carefully. I don't have much time left. Tommy, what the fuck is going on? I cried as I tried to choke my heart back down in my chest, only to be blocked by a well of tears that seemed to move up from nowhere. Look, she said, trying to sound as calm as possible. I suppose her attempt at trying to keep me calm. Do you remember me telling you that I used to dabble in witchcraft a little bit? Yeah, I answered, though not really sure where this was going yet. Well, I may have under exaggerated. I was actually really heavily into witchcraft. What? The confusion I had already been feeling was now hitting like a jackhammer and not letting up. Remember how I told you I had lost my mother to cancer? Yeah, I said, I remember. Finally, my brain latched on to something other than confusion as random flashes of memory spot their way through my neural pathways. Tommy Lan and I had not been dating very long when she first came to me and told me about her mother. She had been admitted for acute stomach pains, then told they had found something, as the doctor put it. A biopsy showed that it was in fact cancer and had spread. When they tried to operate, she had bled considerably, to a point where the tumor was inoperable without the very real possibility of death. So they had placed Tommy's mother in a medically induced coma until specialists could be called in to figure out the next steps. However, Tommy wasn't content to leave it to the doctors. She took matters into her own hands. After my mom was put into the coma, I used my witchcraft to try to cast a spell that I hoped would heal her. Phone Tommy was speaking again, bringing me out of the reverie, back into the darkness of my room. I focused back on the screen. What did you do? I asked. I failed, she replied. I failed miserably. As Tommy began to explain, I was becoming aware that the room was slowly growing colder. Her explanation sent a chill straight down my spine, through my very core, and settled throughout my entire body. My knuckles were frozen white as I gripped my phone. I thought I did everything right. Healing spells aren't supposed to be that complicated. It relies on the personal item you use from the person whom you're trying to heal. What did you use? I asked, my voice trembling, whether from fear or cold, or the returning need to urinate. I'm not sure. But the need to pee would have to wait. I was frozen to my spot on the bed. I used my mother's diary. It had one of those small key locks in it, and I didn't have the key, but I thought it would be good enough. You know, it had her words, her deepest thoughts. She wrote in it every day. It should have been enough. What happened? I asked tentatively. The spell started out okay, but suddenly the room started going red, and this strange wind blew out all my candles. Then I noticed in the corners of the room shadows moving like black liquid dripping down the walls, then forming in the air and starting to swirl in front of me. Oh my God! I exhaled in shock. Once again, the need to urinate moved to the back as a new wave of fear took over. Then I saw these things. I don't know what they were in the swirls, like they were coming toward me. I panicked. There was a brief pause of silence. Maybe she was waiting for me to respond, but I was frozen to her every word. She then continued. Now, I'm not a great witch by any stretch of the imagination, but witches do tend to move in close circles. So I'd heard about things like this happening. Somehow, I remembered an incantation I had learned from another witch on how to close portals. Portals? I asked, a tinge of confusion gnawing at me. You know, doorways to other dimensions, the things demons try to enter this world through. You watched all the horror movies I did. It's never a good thing, right? Come on, Tommy. You know I don't believe in that kind of stuff. Those were just movies. Well, you better start believing quickly. It's real. So you better start listening because it's about to happen again. If I had been drinking anything in that moment, I would have spit it out. But the most I could muster was a little bit of saliva and drool, which I absentmindedly wiped off my chin. What? I said, not so much a question, but disbelief. The diary, she said. It's not what I thought it was. It was her book of spells. She never told me. I didn't know. When I used it in my spell, it was the link the demons needed to open the portal. You need to get the book. She was speaking faster now. Again, I became aware of the coldness of the room. I pulled the blankets up tighter around me as I sat back, but they didn't help. Look around, Tommy continued, more urgently now. The book is in my backpack. That's what they're after. I did. I looked around. I wish I hadn't. Up in the corner of the room where the walls met the ceiling, I saw it. The shadows were moving. They began to slowly crawl down the walls, just like black liquid, as Tommy had described. My feet kicked up a notch, and I gripped the blankets even tighter. Tommy must have noticed my expression as she said, "It's starting, isn't it?" "What do I do?" I squeaked out. "Lie down, pull the covers over your head. No matter what happens, don't look." But I was transfixed. The shadows began to swirl in front of me, and as the swirl grew larger, I began to make out shapes within it, small at first, then growing bigger, as if getting closer. Then I saw them. Wings. Dozens and dozens of tiny wings silhouetted against the intermingling reddish hues of the now quite obvious portal to another dimension, as Tommy had so aptly put it. They flew in chaotic spirals in the miasma. Then I heard them, an indescribably shrill, screeching noise as the whoomph, whoomph sounds of the wings tortured my eardrums. This time, fear did overcome me as Tommy's voice pierced through the murky soup of audio. "Get under the blankets now." I did as instructed and curled into a fetal position as deep under the blankets as I could possibly manage. The shrieking became louder, and I could now feel the stinging bites of wings as they pummeled and pelted the outer layers of my very thin shelter. I think I cried. "Don't look," Tommy said again. Her voice was much calmer and softer this time. Thankfully, I still had the light from the phone keeping me company under the blankets, and her face was passive. She began to speak some unknown language, random guttural sounds to my ears, but quickly forming into a rhythmic pattern. The incessant whumping of the wings against the outside of my blanket shelter seemed to be decreasing. Without thinking, I pulled back the blanket just a tiny bit and looked out. God, I wish I hadn't. This thing, whatever it was, this demon, was sitting on top of the lifeless form of what used to be my girlfriend. It had an elongated head with a sharp, beak like mouth of pure black and evil, and rows upon rows of the ugliest and nastiest teeth I could ever imagine. And held within those teeth was an eyeball, the stringy, bloody tendons of the optic nerve still connecting it to the eye socket. Then a sharp snapping sound, and the eye ripped away violently as the demon gnashed greedily and swallowed it. Oh, God, it was eating her fucking eyes. Then the demon seemed to become more aware of my presence, watching it as it turned its glowing, fiery gaze on me, a look of pure, menacing evil, and I think it even smiled, if that was possible. Don't look, I heard Tommy's voice shouting at me. How long she had been shouting, I don't know, but somehow her voice reached through the cacophony and took hold in my brain. I retreated back into the blanket cover. Now I know I was crying. I sobbed quite loudly. Tommy, I said through the heaving sobs. It's okay, said Phone Tommy. Just close your eyes. You'll get through this. I did as I was told this time, not wanting to look again at the carnage happening just mere inches away from me. Once again, Tommy began speaking in that other language, her voice growing louder and more confident as she went. I have never been one to believe much in the afterlife or what happens after death. I had never prayed to a higher power or put much stock into an organized religion. But at that moment, I prayed harder than I ever prayed in my life. I just wanted all this to be over. I became less and less aware of the unintelligible words that Phone Tommy was speaking and more aware of the increasing silence outside of my blanket shelter. I think I was too frozen to realize Tommy was speaking to me again. It's okay, she said. It's over. The portal is closed. It took a moment, but the fuzz in my brain receded. My senses went on high alert as my hearing searched for any signs of whomp whomp noises. I didn't hear any and took that as a sign it was safe to cautiously peek out from under the blankets. The room seemed to be back to normal. It was still cold, but that might be attributed to the fact the fan next to the bed still humming its monotone white noise. I threw off the covers completely and once again wished I hadn't. Her body was still there, but it had been decimated, scratched and ripped apart, missing both eyes, mouth still frozen, and that eternal scream of silence. I choked back a sob. I think it was the only thing that kept me from retching at the sight. I don't have much time left, said Phone Tommy. I'd almost forgotten she was still there. You need to bury my body. Bury the book with me so no one else can ever open up the portal. You have to do this. Do it for me. But you're dead. Yes, I know. And it took all my power to make this connection. I don't know how much longer I can hold it. Now hurry. Then suddenly the screen started to flicker, the pixelation of a bad connection interfering with the image. Tommy, I shouted. I shook the phone to no avail. You know what you need to do, she said in broken audio. I love. And that was it. The screen went black. Tommy, Tommy, I shouted. I shook the phone harder. Nothing happened. I waited, hoping foolishly that she would call back, that I would see your name and face upon my phone screen once again. But after interminable minutes of waiting, the screen remained black. That was it. I finally broke down, cried harder than I've ever cried in my life, next to the body of my dead girlfriend, mutilated and dissected, an ex-witch who dabbled in something she didn't understand and paid the ultimate price. I don't know how long I sat under the hot running water of my shower, trying to clean off the blood and viscera. I had moved through the next few hours completely on autopilot, my brain detaching itself from my body so I could complete the task that had been assigned to me. I let the water flow over me and just sat there, rocking, much too numb to move or think or do anything. The phone sat next to me on the rim of the tub, a black mirror, waiting for one phone call I knew deep inside I would never receive. I had found the book, her mother's diary. It was just where she said it was, in her backpack, which she had left sitting downstairs in the TV room next to the couch. I realized that maybe why the demons had targeted her here at my place, because she had the diary with her. And it did have the gold lock, as she described, but it was small. Tommy might not have been able to unlock it, perhaps respecting her mother's privacy, but we were long past that. I pulled hard, and the small lock broke off in my hand. The book fell to the floor with the effort. The pages fluttered open as it landed. There, in the pages, I saw things no human, no mortal being was ever meant to see. Symbols and images that once again brought those waves of fear freezing over me. I gingerly picked the diary up from the floor and thumbed through the pages. It was a diary of sorts, as it did contain Tommy's mother's words and thoughts, but it was so much more than that. There were also spells and ingredients for spells, incantations. It was a witch's journal, a textbook, with all of her accumulated knowledge. It was also filled with inked out drawings of ritual patterns and pictures of things I couldn't even begin to describe. Then, within the very last few pages, I saw something that once again brought that familiar wave of paralyzing fear to wash over me. It was an image, a very dark but excruciatingly detailed image I wish I had never seen. On the final page was a picture that was unmistakably Tommy, with her mouth wide open and an eternal scream and two black eye holes. There, sitting next to her, was the very recognizable form of the demon I had seen from under my blankets, and in its mouth was an eyeball.